Hello YouTube, Heartless Angel here, bringing you another Pokemon X and Y Wi-Fi battle. Now today I have an amazing UU match for you with a very special opponent. It is the one, the only, ShadyPenguinn. Now before I go on, I just want to say how much of an honor it was to be able to face Shady one-on-one like this, and it was such a close match, as you will soon see. So I started with my Galvantula as he starts out with his Rotom Heat. Wanting to get the sticky web up as soon as possible, I decide to stay in and take the overheat instead of going into the obvious Houndoom switch in case he decides to go for the Volt switch, predicting the Houndoom. The overheat does take me to my Focus Sash, however, which is fine as I'm able to get my webs up. Now, predicting one more overheat to finish me off, I decide to make the switch into Houndoom now as he switches out into his Golbat, putting me into a pretty bad position. Now, this early on, if Houndoom was to get poisoned, it would put me in a very bad spot, so I decide to make the switch into Jirachi, knowing that it will be immune to the Toxic and will be able to take anything that this Golbat throws at me. He does go for the Toxic, however, which makes my play a really good one. Now, predicting the switch out, I decided to set up Stealth Rocks instead of going for the obvious Zen Headbutt in case he decided to switch into Hydreigon. However, he stays in and goes for the Defog, making all of that hard work for naught. Deciding to, for this time, go onto the offensive, I decide to go for the Zen Headbutt, but he predicts and actually, funny enough, switches out into his Rotom instead of his Hydreigon, which is fine by me as I can still at least get some damage off on it. Now, not wanting to take the overheat, I decide to switch into Houndoom now, but he predicts that and instead goes for the Volt switch, dealing more damage to Houndoom than I would have liked this early on in-game. Switching into his Hydreigon, I decide to switch out into Galvantula, knowing that Houndoom can do nothing to this Hydreigon as it resists both of my stab moves, and while I do run the Destiny Bond on this Houndoom, I really don't want to sack Houndoom this early on in game. So I decide to sack off Galvantula in order to scout out what he goes for. He does actually go for the U-turn, which is great for me, as not only do I get a free safe switch in, but I also get the switch initiative as well. Now, seeing that he switches back into his Rotom, I decide to go into Flygon, knowing that going for Stone Edge is my best bet in this case, in case he goes for the Golbat or even stays in. He does stay in with Rotom, however, and it falls to my choice Scarf, Stone Edge. Now, he switches out into his Doublade at this point, and since I'm Scarf, I'm locked into Stone Edge, and knowing that Stone Edge won't do anything to this Doublade at all, I decide to switch out into Cofagrigus. I know this may seem like a strange play, but without Swords Dance up, Doublade doesn't really hit all that hard, and I know that Cofagrigus can take the Shadow Claw or the Shadow Sneak. Now, he switches out into his Golbat as I go for the Will-O-Wisp, which does let me get some residual damage off. It's not as good as if I had hit the Doublade, but like I said, it does give me the residual damage that plays actually an important role later on. Now, wanting to get rid of his Eviolite, I decide to go for the knockoff, but he switches out into his Hydreigon, and once again, not the worst thing in the world, but definitely not as good as knocking off the Eviolite off the Golbat. However, I do knock off the Assault Vest, which does make his Hydreigon more susceptible to future special attacks. Now, I really did not want to take a Dark Pulse, so I decided to switch out into Flygon, who takes just under half of its health from the Dark Pulse. Now, he switches out into his Golbat again as I go for the Dragon Claw, which, with the burn, does a decent amount of damage onto the Golbat. Now, knowing that another Dragon Claw alone probably wouldn't be enough to finish off the Golbat, I decide to switch out into Jirachi as he goes for the Super Fang, cutting Jirachi's HP down in half. This actually did surprise me because I don't really run into Super Fang all that often, so with the burn, I would have thought that Super Fang would have done less amount, and also considering I was Steel, but Super Fang does always, no matter what, cut your HP down by half, so the Steel typing and the burn didn't matter at all. Now, predicting this Zen Headbutt, he decides to switch out into Hydreigon as I go for the Stealth Rock, predicting his Hydreigon switch. Now, not wanting to once again take the Dark Pulse, I decide to switch out into Flygon, and this was a really, really risky play. He could have easily predicted the Flygon switch, as I did switch into Flygon before, and he could have gone for the Dragon Stab. However, I knew that Flygon would be able to take another Dragon Pulse and force a switch out, so I decided to take the risk, which really worked out in the end. He does, excuse me, however, decide to stay in as I go for the U-turn. At this point, the only thing that can safely switch into this Hydreigon is Slurpuff, since it resists both the Dark Stab and is immune to the Dragon Stab, which is what I actually predicted that he would go for. However, he does go for another Dark Pulse, which Slurpuff takes extremely well. Now, this Slurpuff, as you've probably seen from my previous UU battles with this team, is a Belly Drum, Citrus Berry, Unburdened set, and it is my favorite set for Slurpuff, and it's really, really dangerous. So predicting him to switch out, I decide to go into Belly Drum, but to my surprise, he actually stays in and goes for the Flamethrower, which does a considerable amount of damage onto my Slurpuff. Now, knowing my best bet, no matter what I go for, is, no matter what he goes for, is for the Play Rough, I decide to just go for the Play Rough, which he stays in on, and Hydreigon, unsurprisingly, goes down to it. Now, he brings out his Doublade, which I know will most likely be able to kill me with a Shadow Sneak at this range. I do decide to stay in to get the safe switch in next turn once Slurpuff does go down, which it does to a Shadow Sneak, unfortunately. I decide to go back into Cofagrigus, knowing that it is the best defense against Doublade, since I do have the Will-O-Wisp. He does, however, decide to switch out as I go for the Knockoff, which is actually really good for me, as I not only knock off the Golbat's Eviolite, but with the burn, it's enough damage to make the Golbat fall, allowing me to keep my Stealth Rocks up since he can't go for another Defog. At this point, he brings in his Ampharos, which Mega Evolves and goes for a Dragon Pulse, and this does more damage than I would have liked on Cofagrigus, and this probably, not switching into Jirachi here, probably helped me lose the game, as you will see later on. So he does go for the Dragon Pulse, which does do a huge amount of damage on Cofagrigus, as I go for the Shadow Ball, which doesn't even do close to the amount that he did to me. I do, however, get the special defense drop, which is always nice in a situation like this. Knowing I can't take another Dragon Pulse, though, and wanting to save Cofagrigus for later, I decide to switch out into Jirachi, knowing that it does resist the Dragon Pulse, and it is my best bet against the Ampharos. So, as I go for the Jirachi, he does switch into Doublade, as I go for the Iron Head, which sadly does absolutely nothing to it. Now, I really make a really questionable play here, as I stay in and go for the Zen Headbutt. I'm not exactly trying to get the flinch here, but it's partly because I'm willing to sack off Jirachi and see what he goes for. He does, however, go for the Swords Dance, putting me in a really, really tight spot. I switch into Flygon, knowing that even if it is Scarfed, it will die to a Shadow Sneak, as Shadow Sneak is priority, and I don't run any priority on Flygon. I don't even think Flygon gets priority. If I'm wrong, though, definitely let me know. So I decide that the next best thing is to sack it in order to get the upper hand here. He does go for the Shadow Claw, which does unsurprisingly kill Flygon, allowing me to safely switch into Houndoom, which is the only thing that will have the best bet of taking out Doublade at this point. I do decide to Mega Evolve and take the Shadow Sneak fairly well, allowing me to go for the Fire Blast for max damage, taking Doublade out. Now, the reason I went for Fire Blast instead of Dark Pulse is simply because I wasn't sure if he was Eviolite or not, and I wanted to make sure that this Doublade died. So I risked him switching out into, let's say, the Feraligatr, which would have taken the Fire Blast really well. just to make sure that this Doughblade died, essentially. Now, this is where the game takes a turn for the end. He brings in his Feraligatr, which I have no idea how to handle. However, my DS decides for me. Without me touching it, and I kid you not, it presses attack, presses Dark Pulse as he goes for the Dragon Dance. The Dark Pulse actually does a decent amount of damage, but I'm not confident that I can outspeed with a +1, so I decide to switch out into Cofagrigus, which he takes out with a Waterfall. Now, I'm not sure if he would have been able to kill Cofagrigus if it had more health from the, I believe it was the Dark Pulse from Hydreigon earlier, but, oh no, sorry, the Dragon Pulse from Ampharos. However, it does essentially, right now, fall from one Waterfall. My last hope here is Jirachi, as I believed it would be possible to survive a Waterfall, allowing me to go for a Zen Headbutt and then finish Ampharos off after Feraligatr went down. However, he is running the Earthquake, which quickly dashes my hopes and dreams, as he is easily able to outspeed and take down Houndoom with a Waterfall. And unfortunately, that is game, but that was such a close match with Shady, and I just have to say, once again, that it was such an honor, and that his side of the video was posted on his channel, so if you want to see live commentary of the battle with someone who is a lot better at commentating than I am, definitely check his channel out if you already haven't. But this is ShadyPenguinn, so of course you have. Well, that's all I have for you today, folks. Enjoy the video and have a good day. See you later, guys.